The data set reframes the conversation. And that's what's exciting, is that when you start looking through at culture through the lens of where are events taking place, it actually shows you a picture that you haven't ever envisioned before. And that changes the conversation. And I think that's what's really exciting, that the conversation becomes about where is culture happening, how do we define culture, and it actually, I think the interesting part is every community is different, and it gives the ability to define that culture exists in different ways in different places.
It's not easy to get it in a standardized fashion, which is another thing that's really exciting about this data, is it puts a focus on standardizing, but it also says where do we have to go to find out, how do we find out what's happening in communities that aren't necessarily putting their information in your standard kind of vehicles for delivery of listings. You know, where is, we heard an example yesterday, where is the Korean American community? How are they communicating where their events are happening? And so if you actually consciously, by defining your community, by defining cultural events, if you set out to really collect and extract information from the whole area, then when you look at a cultural map, a map of where stuff is happening, you begin to see, first of all, what areas are perhaps overrepresented, overpopulated, what areas are underpopulated, and what areas, while they may traditionally be considered a cultural wasteland, there's nothing happening there, actually have an enormous amount of activity happening that we don't know about. And that if you can make people aware of the wider breadth of the material, then you actually have people, I think, taking in potentially new cultural activities that they wouldn't otherwise be doing, which then strengthens those organizations. And the community is strengthened by having the conversations, I think.
Looking at cultural events on a map actually is very, it's a democratization of culture, that everybody has a place and you're represented there. And I think that's really exciting because technologies these days can help those small enterprises be just as noticeable as a large enterprise. And I think that's exciting, and that actually allows them to have the same access to the community as any other player. A developer, planning to go into a community and has a really good lens onto what kind of cultural activities that are happening. That development is going to be planned differently. It's going to encourage that activity because we know healthy communities are where a lot of culture takes place. And so how it changes other people's thoughts about how culture affects their community, their neighborhood, or you have a highly served community of culture, and you map that you don't have available transportation that is coming to that area. That's going to change the dialogue.
The ramifications for things like how you get people places, how do you deliver services are huge.
So it no longer becomes isolated. It actually becomes part of a bigger conversation. It's not just about culture, but it's about planning, it's about transportation, it's about policy, it's about education.
It's about urban development. Something I hadn't really thought about till just now is, you're an entrepreneur, you want to start a restaurant. Well, where do restaurants thrive? Restaurants thrive where people go out. So then you can look at it and go, okay, you can say, well, there's a bunch of cultural activity here. It's also a rapidly growing neighborhood from a demographic point of view. Maybe this is a place for me to open my business. Maybe as opposed to someone having to go and find you and say, hey, you need to be aware of the fact that we're starting a cultural district here, it makes that information more widely available.
It's a robust database that I think enlivens not only the person who is interpreting it, but the community and being aware that it's even happening. I think one of the biggest surprises was that we all are experts at culture, but we really guess about how much activity is really happening.
How much is happening.
This actually defined it. And it's pretty exciting.